In my previous video, I spoke about why I think wealth taxes are not a good idea, why they're infeasible and they simply will not work if implemented on their own to achieve what it seeks to achieve. I spoke about how we can get de facto the effects that the wealth tax aims to achieve by, instead of imposing it, making reforms to how government finances are spent, rethinking government finances entirely. So I'm going to link that below, but this video is going to be focused mainly on essentially the crux of how a de facto wealth tax can be imposed without actually imposing a wealth tax. So first and foremost, what is a wealth tax? What does it aim to achieve? A wealth tax is essentially a tax on an individual's wealth. I mean, simple, isn't it? But those who propose it want this implemented on those who are wealthy, ultra wealthy, people whose net worths are in the millions. There's thresholds that range from low millions to 10 million, 50 million plus, etc. So in terms of how is it implemented, well, that's where it gets complex. So what does it aim to achieve? What it aims to achieve is to reduce wealth inequality, which is quite high in the United Kingdom right now, by getting income from the ultra wealthy into the government, which can be redistributed to those who need it, those on unemployment, disability benefits, etc. So in terms of the difficulty implementing it, well, as I touched upon in the previous video, a lot of ultra wealthy individuals have their wealth in investments in assets that are not liquid, whereas the taxpayers paying large amounts of income tax, they've got income coming in, that's liquid cash coming in to them. And these people are not necessarily high net worth individuals. You can be a taxpayer in the highest bracket but be a low net worth individual. These aren't contradictory things. They aren't mutually exclusive to each other. So wealth tax, in my opinion, there's no point trying to, spend so much time trying to figure out a way to impose it, because the projections show that they can't even raise that much money to reduce the deficit, which is the real problem here. And wealth inequality, as I said, is really going to do a negligible amount to solve these two things. So what I'm proposing is, rather than putting in a tax, there needs to be reform to the spending, namely to the NHS. So the NHS accounts for about a sixth of the government spending. The government is currently having over 100 billion budget deficit. The NHS spending is almost double the deficit. The NHS spending is about 200 billion. The budget deficit is just over 100 billion. So I'm not advocating for privatization, complete privatization of the NHS or just cutting it. That would be very foolish. That would be disastrous for any person to advocate. What I'm advocating for is for cuts to the NHS such that those who are higher net worth, those who have the ability to pay, whether it's through their income or it's through their net worth, then they will be directed towards private healthcare. So this will mean a large chunk of the NHS is privatized, which will end up cutting the deficit significantly. And it will come with the caveat that these people will only be able to access the NHS if they have emergency health needs, like using A&E and possibly GP appointments. But these are small nuances that can be figured out when implementing it, and there's much greater reason and necessity to put effort into realizing how we're going to implement this rather than a wealth tax, because this can actually generate much more revenue for the government, reduce the deficit, and get the government out of this fiscal disaster that it finds itself in. So this will obviously take away the universality of the NHS, but if we're being honest, the NHS, for two reasons, is not free. at least for most people, because one, it's the taxpayer paying for it. So it's not really free for the taxpayer. They're not getting their fair share, because there's a lot of people in this society, whether they're not working, whether they're working, they're earning less money, but they have higher worth, higher liquid cash. So they're not getting per capita. If you look at how much is spent on the NHS per capita, they're not getting their fair share. So this will make it so that per capita, the taxpayer, the people who are entitled to the NHS are going to be getting far better services, and those who can afford private are going to be able to. Now, it will avoid the situation like the United States, where if you can't pay for an operation, you're finished, or something like that, you know, if your insurance can't cover it. Because in the UK, because we have this NHS framework, if an individual can't cover the surgeries, then these can be done by the government. But in the event that they can, in the event that these are, you know, somewhat comfortable people when it comes to their net worth and income, etc., thinking about all these things in tandem, then they should be using the private services. They should only be entitled to the NHS in emergencies, like health emergencies, and also when they simply cannot afford it. Now, in the UK, any mention of privatization by a lot of people is frowned upon, sort of dismissed straight away. But if we are not open to this kind of conversation, we're simply not going to go anywhere, because a completely public NHS funded by the taxpayer is going to put so much burden on the taxpayer, which we're seeing economic effects of this. High tax, we've got low growth, and very bad quality public services if we look at the amount of tax that's being paid. So this is going to actually increase the healthcare dramatically. It's going to increase it for the people who are in the NHS. It's going to increase the quality for the people who are doing private. This is just one way. The NHS is just one way of implementing this de facto wealth tax that is actually not only going to serve as a way to reduce wealth inequality, but dramatically improve public services, because by rethinking government spending, the deficit will be cut without damaging public services, by through privatization still maintaining a good quality, and actually not maintaining, actually improving the quality, because the quality we have now is simply insufficient. So people can argue that, you know, this is really not going to improve anything, but what else is there to propose, right? I mean, I'm not saying I'm an expert, like I said in my previous video, but we have to be innovative here. We need to think about, you know, sort of solutions that haven't been considered now, thinking outside the box, sort of not thinking about it simplistically. It's not simply a thing about cutting spending, increasing taxes. It's about rethinking the entire thing inherently. What the thing that we're investing in, like the public services, what is the nature of it? Is it completely state funded, or is some of it private, such that we can reduce the burden on the government, which in turn reduces the burden on the taxpayer? So that's just my opinion on this issue. In conclusion, I don't believe that wealth taxes on its own is a good thing, simply because it's hard to implement, and I think that it's not going to achieve what it aims to achieve. Whereas what it aims to achieve will be achieved more likely, because nothing is a guarantee. I'm not saying what I'm proposing is gonna work, but what I'm proposing puts a greater likelihood of it achieving reducing the wealth inequality, but also to improve government finances, which is arguably as pressing as an issue as wealth inequality right now. Thank you very much, guys. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below. Thank you.